First of all, thank you very much to the team here, to Professor Belagamba, to Marco for the invitation. For us, it's really a privilege to come and meet another research group, really, that is working on themes that we are trying to explore in perhaps novel ways that haven't been done yet in the field of aging and migration. So before I go into the discussant comments, I'll just give you a very brief background about our Aging in a Time of Mobility research group, which is at the Max Planck Institute in Göttingen. So we started our project in 2018, so we're about Dora and Vicky joined about a year ago, so they've just come back from the first bits, or in Dora's case, all of the field work. And this is now a stage where we are really gathering our thoughts, our reflections from field work, and then slowly starting to develop concepts. But what is really the focus of our research group? It's looking at the intersections between aging and migration, and we're looking at it specifically with a focus on the global south. So we're looking at cases, as you heard, from Asia, Latin America, and we also have a PhD fellow working in Cameroon. And so it would have been great also for her to come here. She just has a newborn baby, so maybe the next time she can join in and share her insights from the Cameroonian context. But yeah, the idea behind the group was really to look at the intersections between aging and migration in regions of the world that might still be perceived as young. You heard from Victoria the way the Indonesian state maybe perceives aging, or Brazil, as Dora pointed out. In Senegal, it also will be interesting to hear how aging is talked about from the point of view of the state, but places that are typically considered young but that are rapidly aging, and that are also embedded in global migration and regional mobilities. So how these demographic processes are influencing each other in quite significant ways for our world today. So I found the three talks really fascinating, and I think although I know your focus is on African diasporas, I think it does open up some conceptual or thematic points that we could talk about, in a more comparative or global sense that relate to African diasporas, but also other cases or other regional contexts. So, I mean, what we see from the presentations is a view on aging diasporas, dynamics of inclusion, exclusion, belonging, over the course of time. So how aging maybe is a lens on the passing of time. So as a lens to connect the past, the present, and future imaginaries of people. And also in post-colonial contexts, in a neoliberal globalized world, which is fluid, but also still very much shaped by hard borders that impact the ways that people age in the world. So what is specific to being an aging migrant? What is specific to being a member of an aging diaspora? What does that mean? And I think we've heard in very rich and concrete ways from the three talks what that could mean, and how they are rooted also in the sort of historical and political configurations of their diaspora, right? It's not just a presentist moment, but it's shaped by histories of mobility, of multiple displacements, that have to be seen in a bigger frame. And also the heterogeneity of a diaspora. You have exiles, you have people who are doing lower skilled labor, investors. So when thinking about the diaspora, we're also thinking about a very diverse group of people who have different access to privilege. And I think here the mobility regimes also matter a lot. So we have people who are undocumented, people who have been forcibly displaced, people who have been able to form rich diasporic communities over time, and this matters, I think, to how they age, or how they think about care, family, and growing older. And I think what was very interesting also is to look at how also the younger diasporas, people who are abroad, connect to the older parents who are not just back there or back home, but who are very much embedded in these transnational migration projects that we heard in Dora's case. And also I found this idea of the multi-sited villages really brought that web of connectivity between generations together, and how they scattered across the world. So I will just highlight maybe 3 or 4 themes that I thought also come out of these presentations, and hopefully not talk too long so that we can open it up for more discussion. For me, it's interesting to think about what aging in the Global South means. Is this category of the Global South useful as a lens for thinking about it, without wanting to homogenize or reify something called the Global South, but maybe looking at cases in societies that are not Euro-American, perhaps may offer us different ways to think about what the norms about aging, to challenge some of the discourses that are quite dominant in gerontological discourse or policy in the world, which are still largely Euro-American. So what is active aging? What is successful aging? And I think cases from other places bring out the more culturally or historically situated meanings and nuances of age and aging in other ways. Looking at maybe the ancestral rituals, the importance of lineage and kinship, how people still want to achieve rich and fulfilling lives through business, through politics, through odd jobs here and there, which include a wider sphere, not just the country in which they're living, but a transnational web. And so I think you have very different cultural constructions of aging that emerge. And I think what struck me from all 3 also is the idea of the economies of aging, the idea of work, labor, the act of doing, resources in later life. What does it mean when we have categories like retirement, employment, unemployment? How do these broader categories of welfare thinking translate into sort of lived experiences of how people think about life transitions and what they do in this quite long stage post-retirement, whatever that means. And so for me, it's interesting to ask the 3 presenters, what does retirement mean for the people that you work with? Is it a category that is useful or matters at all in these contexts? And also the complexities of care. We look at of course, caregiving, older people in need of care. I think the question came up earlier about who cares for those who really need care or who are not able to be self-sufficient. And so I think also we should be careful not to romanticize maybe this sort of activeness of which could also go into maybe a more neoliberal way of thinking about the active agent who is aging, but to look a little bit more nuanced about what is meaningful to people and what their needs actually might be, or how their vulnerabilities might be accentuated by certain broader political, social, and economic structures. But also to look at care in a broader sense beyond just healthcare. I think that's also important. So care in terms of the affective or emotional dimensions of fears or aspirations. And also care in terms of the community in which people are living in, not just in terms of kinship. I think I could go on, but maybe I stop there because I've raised a few points. So maybe the 3 bigger questions to ask the 3 presenters, or to open up debate, was the question about retirement and if these categories of welfare thinking matter in these contexts. I also wondered, what is a good life, or what does it mean to age well in your fieldwork settings? And how can we think about the intersections also between aging, citizenship, and non-citizenship? And I think that's sort of running through all of the themes also, all of the presentations. Thank you, and let's open it up.